On the morning of March 2nd, 1998, 10-year-old Natasha Kampusch set out on what should have been a routine walk to school. It was a journey she had longed to make alone, a small step toward the independence she craved. The streets of Vienna, usually a safe haven, were about to become the stage for a horrifying incident that would shock the world. As Natasha walked along the familiar route, lost in the thoughts of a typical child, a white van pulled up beside her. Before she could react, she was grabbed by a stranger and pulled into the vehicle.
I walked down the street and I saw a man grab me and...
The man behind this brazen act was Wolfgang Priklopil, a 35-year-old communications technician. This was no random act of violence. Priklopil had meticulously planned the abduction, stalking Natasha for days, and even faking a work appointment to ensure he had an alibi. With Natasha now in his grasp, Priklopil drove to his home in the quiet town of Strasshof, located 15 miles north of Vienna. Here, hidden beneath his garage, lay a dark secret. A tiny, windowless, soundproofed chamber, fortified with steel and concrete. This prison, so secure that it took an hour just to gain entry, would become Natasha's world for the next 3,096 days. Natasha's initial instincts were those of survival. She tried to gather as much information about her kidnapper as possible. Recalling advice she had seen on television about aiding the police, she asked Priklopil questions, even inquiring about his shoe size. But as the days turned into weeks and months, it became clear that her release wouldn't come easily. She was trapped in a fortified dungeon with little hope of escape, at the mercy of a man whose motives remained terrifyingly unclear. The room in which Natasha was held was a mere 5 square meters, equipped with a sink, toilet, and a bed. The walls were lined with cork to muffle any sounds, and the heavy door was reinforced with steel. Priklopil had gone to great lengths to ensure that no one would discover his captive. Natasha was forced to endure unimaginable conditions, isolated from the outside world, with no contact with her family or friends. Her only human interaction was with her captor, who controlled every aspect of her life. As the days turned into weeks, Natasha's family and the authorities continued their desperate search. Flyers were distributed, and her face was broadcast on national television. But with no leads and no sign of Natasha, hope began to fade. The investigation hit dead ends, and the media attention waned. But for Natasha's family, the pain and the search for their missing daughter never stopped.
Aber wie dann die 48 Stunden abgelaufen sind, habe ich gesagt, so lange kann sie nicht nutzen und irgendwo in einer Ecke sein. Ja?
Natascha, ich bitte dich um alles. Bitte komm zurück. Und egal, wenn du nicht kannst.
Meanwhile, in the small, dark chamber beneath Priklopil's garage, Natasha was forced to adapt to her new reality. She had no choice but to rely on her kidnapper for food, water, and basic necessities. The room became her entire world, and Priklopil became the only person in it. The power dynamics were clear, and Natasha had to navigate this twisted relationship to survive. Natasha Kampusch's 8-year-long captivity was a harrowing ordeal that tested the limits of human endurance. Confined to a small, windowless cellar beneath Wolfgang Priklopil's house, Natasha's days were marked by isolation, deprivation, and fear. The cellar, measuring just 5 square meters, became her world, with a bed, toilet, and a sink as her only amenities. Priklopil controlled every aspect of her life, from the food she ate to the clothes she wore. Despite the grim conditions, Natasha displayed remarkable resilience and a will to survive. She was allowed out of the cellar for limited periods, during which Priklopil took her on errands or for short walks, always under his watchful eye. He even took her on a skiing trip, a bizarre and risky move that underscored his confidence in his control over her. Natasha later revealed she had tried to signal for help during these outings, but her attempts went unnoticed. Education became a lifeline for Natasha. Priklopil provided her with books, and she immersed herself in reading and learning, a small act of defiance against her captor. She taught herself to speak multiple languages and developed a keen interest in science and history. This self-education became the source of strength and a way to mentally escape from her grim reality. Physically, Natasha was kept relatively healthy, as Priklopil provided her with food and basic medical care. However, the psychological toll of her captivity was immense. Natasha later revealed that she had contemplated escape many times, but feared the consequences. She also admitted to having moments of despair, but her determination to survive and hope for freedom kept her going. The investigation into the disappearance of Natasha Kampusch began immediately after she failed to arrive at school. On the morning of March 2nd, 1998, the police launched a massive search operation, combing the area around her home and school, interviewing witnesses, and following up on leads. However, despite their best efforts, they were unable to find any trace of the missing 10-year-old girl. The case quickly gained national attention, and the media began to speculate about what might have happened to Natasha. Some reports suggested that she had run away from home, while others speculated that she had been abducted by a stranger. The police followed up on hundreds of leads, but none of them led to any concrete evidence. As the days turned into weeks, and then months, the chances of finding Natasha alive began to diminish. The police continued to investigate, but the trail had gone cold. The case was eventually classified as a cold case, and the investigation was scaled back. Over the years, there were several false alarms and reported sightings of Natasha, but none of them turned out to be credible. The police continued to follow up on leads, but there was no breakthrough in the case. It wasn't until 8 years later, on August 23, 2006, that the case took a dramatic turn. Natasha Kampusch, now 18 years old, managed to escape from her captor and contacted the police. She was found in a state of shock and was immediately taken to the hospital for a medical examination. Wolfgang Priklopil, a 44-year-old communications technician who had kept Natasha captive in a small, windowless cellar beneath his house for more than 8 years, was identified as the kidnapper. The police searched Priklopil's house and found the hidden cellar where Natasha had been held captive. The room was small, soundproofed, and could only be accessed through a hidden door in Priklopil's garage. The police also discovered that Priklopil had taken extensive measures to prevent Natasha from escaping. He had installed surveillance cameras around his property and had forced Natasha to change her appearance by cutting and dyeing her hair. He had also forced her to adopt a new name and had told her that the house was rigged with explosives that would detonate if she tried to escape. In the early stages of the investigation, a witness had reported seeing Natasha being abducted in a white van, a detail that would later prove crucial. It wasn't until 8 years later, after Natasha's escape, that the significance of the white van came into focus. The same vehicle, which had been used in the abduction, was found at Priklopil's residence. The discovery of the van corroborated the witness's account and confirmed that Priklopil had indeed been the kidnapper. The police also discovered that Priklopil had subjected Natasha to physical and psychological abuse during her captivity. He had beaten her, starved her, and had forced her to do household chores while he went to work. He had also manipulated her into believing that he was her only protector and that the outside world was dangerous. The investigation into the case continued, and the police interviewed Natasha extensively to gather evidence against Priklopil. On August 23, 2006, Natasha, then 18 years old, seized a rare opportunity to escape. The day of her escape started like any other. Priklopil had forced Natasha to do household chores, including cleaning his car. On that fateful day, she was vacuuming the car in the garden. Priklopil received a phone call. Distracted by the call, he momentarily stepped away, leaving Natasha unattended. Sensing her chance, Natasha made a split-second decision to run for her life. She left the vacuum cleaner running and sprinted to a neighbor's house, where she frantically banged on the window, pleading for help. The neighbor, initially startled by this disheveled young woman at her window, quickly called the police. Natasha was taken to a local police station, where she identified herself as the missing girl, whose face had been plastered on posters and news broadcasts for nearly a decade. The police were initially skeptical, as there had been several false claims of her identity in the past. However, when Natasha revealed details that only the real Natasha Kampusch would know, they were convinced. As news of her escape spread, it sent shockwaves through Austria and the world. The media descended on the small town, eager to catch a glimpse of the young woman who had endured such a horrific ordeal. Natasha's family, who had never given up hope of finding her, were overjoyed and relieved to be reunited with their long-lost daughter. Meanwhile, Priklopil, realizing that Natasha had escaped and that the police were closing in on him, chose to end his life. He threw himself in front of a train, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Natasha's escape and Priklopil's suicide marked the climax of a saga that had captivated the nation. The young woman, who had been snatched from the streets of Vienna as a 10-year-old, had finally broken free from her captor's clutches. Kampusch's return to the outside world was a challenging transition. She had spent her formative years in captivity, isolated from society, and had to learn to adapt to a world that had changed significantly during her absence. She underwent extensive therapy and support to help her cope with the trauma and adjust to her new life. Despite the challenges, Kampusch showed remarkable strength and determination. She chose to speak out about her ordeal, sharing her story with the world in interviews, a book, and even a film, 3,096 Days. She became an advocate for victims of abduction and abuse, using her platform to raise awareness and support others who had suffered similar experiences. Ironically, Kampusch now owns the house where she was held captive for 8 years. She purchased the house where she was imprisoned in a windowless cellar, a decision that drew attention and raised questions. Kampusch has stated that she didn't want the house to become a theme park and has chosen to maintain it herself. Lawyer Gerald Gansger says Kampusch received 2/3 of the property as compensation and reached agreement with the captor's mother for the remaining third. She is not thought to live there.